Hi everyone, and welcome to our presentation this afternoon. My name is Rob,
Hello, I'm Mirka.
and today we're going to be talking a little bit about how to click with students. So by that I mean how to build a rapport with students. So our presentation will be in a few steps. We'll first look at what and how and why rapport is important. We'll then look at some how to make a good first impression. We'll follow on by looking at the main part of the presentation will be about making practical tips for you guys, and then we'll have a question and answer session at the end, as always, where we will be more than happy to answer your questions. As always, you can send your questions in on YouTube or in Teams, and we'll be more than happy to answer those. So let's crack on then, yeah?
Yeah, we shall.
So-
Okay. So sometimes you hit it off naturally without having to try. However, most of the time that's not the case, right? So what does it mean to build rapport? Rapport basically refers to a relationship between a teacher and a student, and that relationship should be based on a mutual trust, right? We should be able to trust each other. Why? Because it simply improves our communication, right? And it's very important that students trust us because that way they can learn more and they also learn more easily. Ideally, we would like to trust students as well. Why? Because obviously you need this comfortable environment while you're teaching, right? So it's very important. And if it's done this way, basically this creates somehow better atmosphere in the class, and of course it contributes to a better quality of teaching or teaching quality. Yeah,
Absolutely. It's about making sure that the student feels comfortable, you as the teacher feel comfortable. I think often people confuse rapport with being liked. So it's not about liking each other at all, but it's just about having that confidence with each other, trust as we mentioned, and acknowledging each other throughout the class.
absolutely, yes. Let's talk about a first impression for a little bit. Well, everybody knows the quote, you only get one chance to make it right, or one chance to make a first impression. But maybe not everyone knows that the first impression is actually just a 7-second window upon first meeting someone, right? So it has to, we have to create a great first impression very quickly. And how it's done? Well, the only way in here, I would say, is through your personal presentation. That means your appearance, let's say here we're talking about a smile as well, things like politeness, friendliness, and also the way you introduce yourself. That's very important. Why we mentioned quickly, because obviously Rapport is a nice helping tool. However, most of the time, or what you should really focus in the class, is sharing the knowledge with the student. So therefore we have compiled, or we have put together some helpful tips that could help us teachers to basically build this rapport quickly and effectively. So shall we start with the first one?
Perfect. So the first one we're going to cover is using students' names. I mean, it sounds quite basic and sensible, but I think just learning the names as quickly as possible if you've got a new student is vital. And it can be difficult if you have 10, 20, even 30 students in a class. It can be difficult to learn everyone's name, but I think as you need to learn the names as fast as possible. It can, like I say, can be difficult, and I know, speaking from personal experience, when I first started teaching, I was always a little bit, if I forgot the name of the student after 15 minutes into the class, it was a bit awkward I felt a bit uncomfortable and awkward to ask again for their name. But I think it was something that I overcame, and actually you really need to do, and you have to get over the embarrassment really, and just be comfortable and confident saying, sorry, I forgot your name, and probably they've forgotten your name by that point anyway. Yeah. So yeah, using the student's name is the first point.
Yeah. All right, and next, well, I like to call this one break the ice with a smile. Why? Because our facial expressions are very important in terms of building the rapport with the student. Well, here you have to be very careful about one thing. Try not to have these awkward, false, cheesy grimace slapped over your face, because at the end of the day, students or people know and feel whether it's genuine or not, right? So it's very important that it comes from within, right? So yeah.
Perfect. The next point that we have is humor. Try to use a bit of humor in class. Whether that's just having a joke or a laugh about something that's happened. I know I've had students joke at my expense, I've joked at their expense, and so having a little bit of a laugh with the students is important. I try to do it in my classes. I know I remember when I was in primary school and in secondary school, my favourite teachers were always the ones who we could have a laugh with but still do the work at the same time. So I think I've tried to model that in my classes now. I remember specifically I had a geography teacher in secondary school, and he was always up for a laugh and a joke with us, and he's someone that I still remember now and try to model in my teaching. I don't know if you're the same. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. So try to come across as a fun, person. I'm going to teach you here. I'm going to advise you maybe a little, but at the same time stay relaxed and take humor, but be careful with it as well.
Obviously, you need to be careful as well. Like you don't, especially if you're just meeting a student for the first time, you don't want to be making any controversial jokes, let's say. So you've got to be careful with it at the start. But once you've built up a bit of a rapport, you can have a laugh with them.
Absolutely, yes. All right. Well, next we have be genuine and sincere. Right. So did you know that 93% of the perception of your sincerity comes not from what you say, but from how you say it? Well, that's quite a high number, right? So that's quite interesting. So in here, we have to be careful that we are genuine. Basically, I think this is the best advice I was ever given. Be genuine, or in other words, be yourself. Right? Because as we discussed before, people see whether it's that you're faking something or whether what you do is truly you. So it's quite important. I think even, Oscar Wilde had this really lovely quote I'd like to mention, and that is, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. Well, it's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I love I love this quote. Here we have to be careful about overdoing things, right? I remember, for example, when I got a TEFL, which was not that long time ago, from one day to another, you become a teacher, right? And you are like, okay, so before my first class, I was stressing myself so much, and I was like, okay, so act professionally and you have to act like you have done this for 10 years and stay stressing myself for nothing,
It is a lot of stress, but you're right. You kind of feel like you have to pretend almost that you've been doing it for so long when
exactly. So very very soon I realized that this is not the way. Less is more in here. So really, if you try to act naturally, first of all, you're making a favor to yourself because you kind of make it easier for yourself, because it's your natural, and then you also make it more real. Yeah, I get that we are professionals, but at the same time, we have to basically let our personalities shine. Yeah. So, definitely. And I think it's quite nice that our students have the variety of teachers there. We meet different kind of people.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
We learn from them, so it's quite nice. And this is what's beautiful about it, because at the end of the day, if everyone was the same, it would not be so interesting.
And I guess with changing teachers from time to time, from a student's point of view, maybe they have to get used to new teachers, and as a teaching point of view, it can be quite difficult if you're changing students all the time to build rapport with every single group every single time. But there's always little things that we can do to do that, which leads me on to my next point, which is find common ground. So by that I mean find something that you have in common, similar with the students, whether that's something like traveling or music,
right?
Exactly. So music, food, even sports, something like that. You can always find something in common with the students. It can be difficult. You're not going to have the same interests with everybody, but it's just about finding that thing that you have in common with the students. I think it's also important to mention that you can disagree with students, but it's, you need to remain professional at all times. But the disagreement can be okay. It's not a case of always just having to agree with everything they say.
Yeah. Actually, I have something similar to say, but that leads us to our next point, to be empathetic or empathic, depends, right? So to be empathetic means that you basically have to demonstrate the understanding, right? You have to kind of think about the thing that it's not about yourself, it's about students, right? So that means that you have to consider their feelings, their opinions, you have to respect, that there has to be a lot of respect there. So you have to demonstrate this kind of understanding, and it's fine to have an opinion, like Rob said a few minutes ago, but just take it easy. I mean, because we are teachers, we are the ones who have to adapt a little bit, right? So be empathetic. Try to make it nice for them.
Which is again the next point. Be a good listener. So Mitka's going to talk a little bit in a second about what remembering what students like, etc. But I think being a good listener, it involves body language. So that means things like leaning forward, nodding when the students are speaking to show that you're listening, that you're understanding what they say, and everything from your posture. You can mirror what they're doing. The tone of your voice as well, and all the gestures that you use in class is just part of showing that you're listening and taking into consideration what they're saying.
Absolutely, yes. Right, encourage. Right, what does it mean? Basically, you have to get students or people to open up. And how you do it, there are many different ways of doing it. I find for me the easiest one would be to find the student's hobby or something they like doing. Because if you think about it, people always love talking about what they like doing, right?
Of course.
Or their hobbies. I mean, you somehow get excited and you get somehow proud, if you know what I mean. For example, I have this 9-year-old student. Her name is Berta, a lovely little girl. I teach her every week, and she is a bit shy, so it was very hard for me to get inside of her and, try to find out things she likes. And I tried everything, I tried animals and I tried...
the usual things. Music, films.
Hobbies. But at the end, I found out that the only thing that works for her is actually... she needs challenges, so a little competition or a game is just the right thing to do with her. So I always throw this little thing every now and then, and you just see that this is the best way how to encourage her to actually do more or to use the language, right? So, but also I'd like to maybe share one more tip which you can use not only with kids but also with adults, and that is when you talk about. When you want them to give you an example, instead of saying, okay, so can you give me an example of this? Can you tell me that? Try to share your experience first. Right?
Give an example first.
Be the one who gives first example, especially for students who need it, who need this encouragement. I mean, it's something you have to do, right?
And it makes them, if you give an example first, then it kind of makes them feel more comfortable, and then in time they're more open and more willing to speak. And I think the example that you give with the 9-year-old girl is quite well, because it can be more difficult sometimes to build a rapport with maybe a younger student or an adult. There's a big difference whether it's a kid, a teenager, an adult. Maybe from their part, maybe they feel that the age difference it could be a block, for example.
Definitely, yes. There can be many different things that would be on the way.
But it's just like you say about finding that thing that works
you
for
have
them,
to
and
dig in and then try to. In other words, quote by Mirka here.
Quote by Mirka.
Encourage, if you want courage.
Perfect. That's a nice quote.
So,
you should use that.
With this quote, we would like to encourage you guys to start sending questions if you have some questions related to this topic. And just to do a quick wrap up, maybe, today we talked about how to click with students, and we looked into different ways of building a rapport, right? Because actually majority of or most rapport building happens without words. It's basically a non-verbal communication channels we use. So sometimes we don't need to say that much, but our body is talking all the time. And last thing I would like to mention is that the tips and the little things we put together for you, hints, thank you Rob, we put together here for you, would be applicable only not only in the class but also outside, so you can use this with meeting new people, so it's quite nice.
Absolutely. Because you're building rapport with everybody, whether it's a student or whether you're outside.
I think it's quite nice to share this. So.
Perfect. So we will now start answering some of your questions, and we have one already, which is, how important is the material in helping building the rapport?
Right. Okay. Well, obviously it is important. We have different kind of topics for students prepared, so you would always have to kind of adapt the material to the students' needs. So basically in here, maybe we can talk about when you prepare for the class, rather than thinking about, okay, what is the easiest topic to get out of the way, or what is the easiest for me to do, is consider the student. Like, do they like, are they business, are they kids? I mean, do they like to talk about movies maybe? I mean, I have a really nice group of 4 men and they like talking about movies. So last time what I did for them, I created I got quotes from different kind of movies from the internet, and then they loved it. So it was fantastic. I mean, you have to adapt the material to students' needs.
I think it obviously it's impossible to, if you meet a student for the first time, to do that. But once you've met them once, twice, then you can start adapting your material for them and their interests, and that's part of the whole rapport building process,
I think you're actually answering our second question now. What do you cope, or how do you cope with people who show no interest or willingness to participate, or who are negative to your building rapport efforts? And also there was a question I've seen, how do you keep interest with existing students? So that's the one we answered already.
I mean, with in regards to the negative feeling to building rapport, have you had any students where you felt a bit? I mean, I've had students which I've not had much in common with, in which case, it's a little bit more difficult. But I've never really experienced anything where they're very against building up any trust or acknowledgement.
Well, if I had a student like that, I would just have to stay me, right? Stay professional, keep on doing what you do, and maybe stay neutral, right? Don't try to push them into anything, right? So just keep it, okay, we're here to learn, keep it nice and simple.
Neutral, I think, and even if they have very extreme opinions, like I say, you can disagree with them, but you can keep it professional and neutral, like you say, and move on. So any tips or tricks for learning names is another question. I don't know about you, but I think I'm pretty bad with remembering names.
I was gonna say the same, and we're all teachers here. That's quite funny. Well,
I think if I have a large group, if I have a large group of students, and it's the first class, I maybe have a piece of paper with me and write down the name, like the names in the order that they're sat in, so then I can start.
That's a good one.
I can use, what do you think about this, and use the name, and I've got it in front of me, and then I think just repeating it a couple of times, you kind of start to put the name to the face.
During the class, and this is how it will, get to your head.
But any other tip? I don't.
Well, what I do is, because normally when I prepare for my classes, I write just a little bit of on the paper, and I would always put the time and the name. And that helps me to address them with names straight away, whether it's in person or whether it's a web class. So I always write it down. And then, like we mentioned before, when you use it during the class, I mean, it will get to your head quickly. I mean, you associate a face with the name.
And we've kind of answered the next question. Is it not better to note about names? Well, we've answered that one already. So the next one, what would you do if you felt you didn't make a good impression in the first class? That's a very good question, actually. Ooh. Have you ever experienced that? That you felt a bit...
Are you trying to attack me here? Okay, no, not that I know of.
No,
I can't recall anything.
I can't think of an example either, but if I were to do that, I would maybe go back and think about maybe what their hobbies were and what they've said, and then try to tailor my next class to meet their hobbies.
I'm just thinking, I mean, what is the nature of this question? Because you didn't make a good impression. I mean, how is that possible? Because you always try to make a good impression. What could happen, what I think could happen, is that you maybe didn't click with students, right? Or you didn't build the rapport you were hoping for. But you didn't make a good impression. Does it mean that you were not dressed properly, or you didn't care? Or what does it mean? I mean, mean, this shouldn't really happen, right?
Yeah. The other thing I can think of is maybe if a student has had a teacher for a long time and then that teacher leaves, or they need to change teacher, then maybe they might be a little bit uncomfortable about, a bit difficult with building rapport with the new teacher because they think they're missing the old teacher. But then it's up to you to really try your best, like we said, and try to build that click that you just mentioned.
I mean, it can be advantage. We talked about variety of people. Everyone learns from something from someone. So you just try your best and.
There you go. Perfect. Shall we move on to the next one? So, how do you connect with students when they are shy? What tips can you give us? I've had a few very shy students. Yeah, that's a good example. Often kids or teens tend to be quite shy and timid at the start.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would like to say speak their language. I don't know if you understand, Rob, what it means. Speak their language. If you're trying to speak someone's language, to a certain extent, you copy their body language. So, for example, if you have students sat like this, you're not going to try to play to do a performance there because you can come across as, brash or too much.
So copy their body language, maybe.
So
adapt
in a way. Their body language, and a person who's shy. Don't overdo things with this person, right? Try to get them to open up, talking about, let's say, their hobbies or something they like. And everyone has their, the one thing that they like.
That thing,
So,
and again, it leads us on to our next question, which is about any advice on how to build rapport with young learners. I think you've mentioned a lot there. The normal things like movies work quite well, I find, with sports as well with young learners. It's about finding their interest. Everybody has an interest.
Yeah, definitely.
And
everybody has an interest.
It's just about finding what they like and using that.
Young learners.
I think the material can be quite important as well. If you've got a young learner, having lots of visual aids and
videos.
They have they're up for having a laugh as well often as well. So you're having a bit of a joke with them, like we mentioned, and whether even if it's at your expense. Then that's fine. Yeah,
definitely. I'm teaching for little kids every Monday, and it's hard to. It's a 1 hour class, so it's hard to. To occupy them for 1 hour. So one of the things that really work is visuals, as you mentioned. So videos, they like Peppa Pig. So I always put on Peppa Pig, of course English version, and then we talk about it, and we talk about things you see, and learn that way. So young learners, visuals, definitely. That was a good one, Rob. So,
yeah. Perfect. My next question: what do you suggest if you have a hostile student who is frustrated with previous unsuccessful experiences? It's an interesting question. I've not had many hostile students. I've maybe had students who have been learning English before, maybe had a difficult time, a bit of a stressful time learning the language. Personally, I think it's important to make sure that they're calm. The idea that they're relaxed in the classroom.
Do you know what? Make them laugh.
Make them laugh as well. We keep going back to it, but making them laugh. I don't know about yourself. I try to have a laugh in my classes, as I mentioned.
It's not, but
But
if you make someone laugh, they will feel better with you.
Yeah,
right?
and they feel more comfortable.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's not many students are hostile, but like I said, you can get some from time to time, very rarely. But I think just making them feel as comfortable as possible. If they're a bit frustrated with learning English, try to ease them and just help them along the way and just be there for them as well, I think.
Right, next question we have. All these tips are great. Do they all apply to students with different levels? Or do you think that the way you build rapport with a low-level student would be the same as a high level? For
me, I think it's the same. I think because, again, going back to the material needs to be good. You can still have a laugh and a joke and still have a trust with someone who is a low level or a high level. Obviously, maybe the words and the things you talk about will be different, but for me, I think it's the same.
I think it's the same, although if you think about it, if you have the lowest level students, it's hard to have a laugh with them, right?
But you can still have a laugh with them.
How?
Something happens in the classroom, you can still have a joke with them.
So make me laugh and pretend I'm Chinese.
You can still have a laugh by pointing at something or
No,
acting,
you're right.
your body language. You can
Because
still
we talk
act.
about body language.
Yeah.
Right? It's not only about the words.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm thinking? The phone class. If we have a phone class,
Then it's maybe a little bit more difficult.
that
if you're
can be a bit challenging, right?
Do you think that makes a difference then if you're in the classroom or if you have a web class or a phone class or something?
Well, to a certain extent, you have a difference there because obviously interaction when you have a person in front of you is different to the one on the phone or, you know, if it's a web class. But saying that, you know, even if you have a, let's say, a phone one, because I think that's the most difficult one to build a rapport with, is, you know, we talked about a smile. I mean,
you can't do that on the phone.
You can. You can hear
Well, you can actually hear when someone's smiling,
and listen to me. Like, if I say, hello Rob, how are you today? Shall we start a class?
Yeah, you can tell.
And if I say, hello Rob, how are you today? Shall we start a class?
Well, that's about the tone of the voice that we
right?
mentioned as well. So yeah, you can actually hear when they smile. But yeah, in terms of difference of level, for me, I think it's the same. Maybe the situation, if you're in a classroom or on the phone, may differ a little bit, but level for me doesn't come into it too much.
To me, the same. I agree. Level not. Maybe age would be more.
Age is more difficult, like we said about having a young learner. And an adult, it's a little bit different. The next question is: how much time should you spend trying to build rapport? Is it worth devoting an entire class? I don't know what I was saying there. Is it or an entire class?
Well, we talked about first impression, 7 seconds, or first 7 seconds. So obviously, the very first time you meet the student or someone new for the very beginning you meet together, that's the most crucial one, right? But you're kind of building the rapport throughout your class.
From the first second, like we mentioned, 7 seconds to get a first impression, and from there onwards, you're building on it.
But I don't feel it's like that you should devote the entire class. It's more like you behave the way that you keep. You preserve this rapport, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess it comes down to, with some students, from the very first second, we have something in common and we can go on that. With some students, it takes a little bit longer.
Yep.
But I don't think it's a thing of having a time frame that you can put a time frame and an expiry date on it. It's just an ongoing process, you know. And even if you build a rapport and you have a good connection with them, it's still, you know, over the classes, you still have to keep that trust that we mentioned before,
exactly. You know? I mean, I'd like to come back to what I said towards the end of the presentation, that although you may not say anything, your body is talking all the time. So obviously, you know, it depends on what is your body language and how you behave throughout the class.
Yeah.
So,
very good.
Next question.
Is there a difference in the approach you would take when building rapport with groups or with groups of students? I think that is. With a singular student or a group of students? I think that is.
The approach, you take building rapport. Obviously, there's a difference because different people have different personalities, and then there's you as well.
Yeah.
So,
if you've just got one student, it's maybe you can dedicate more time to them and use their interests. Whereas if you've got a group of, say, 10 students, then it's difficult maybe to find out everyone's going to have different interests. So maybe it's difficult to use that one. But again, I think if the group within themselves have a good rapport, maybe if they work together, then it works, and actually it works really well. And to me, again, it doesn't differ too much. Maybe if you've got one student, you can, like we mentioned, tailor your examples. If you're talking about grammar or whatever, you can give the examples connected to what they're interested in. Whereas with a group, maybe that's not.
Maybe it's more difficult to find out.
But again, we mentioned about common interests. Like everybody loves traveling and stuff like that, and so you can always find something.
Building rapport is how you present yourself. So obviously, if you present yourself the same way you would with one student, I mean, the whole group can like you. I mean, it doesn't really make any difference, as you said, does it?
Yeah. Perfect.
Question for Rob.
Question for me. Okay, let's go. You can get involved though as well.
Thank you. Sometimes my low-level students think I have a thick accent, but actually they have low level. What do I do?
That's an interesting one.
Accent.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because sometimes,
Did it happen to you?
Not there have been some, yes, some, it depends. Some I've had some students that find it really easy, and then other students find it a little bit difficult. I think a lot of it depends from the teacher they've had before. If they've had a very different accent, then it takes a little bit of a time. With regards to them thinking about a thick accent, look, there's many different accents in the UK, in Australia, in the States, Canada, etc., from around the world, actually. So it's a case of them just getting used to it, and we're not all trying to speak the same BBC English, let's say. So it's just
at the end of the day. I mean, I don't know who wrote the question, but I mean, you can tell to a student, okay, try to go on a vacation to Australia, try to go to America, try to go to Britain. I mean, the people will not speak the same way.
Yeah.
So it's just a nice thing to have this variety, as Oxbridge does.
Yeah. And people, when you're on holiday, are not gonna just change their accent for your needs, right? They're gonna keep the same accent. So if you get in a taxi, you need to get used to the taxi driver's accent.
That's right.
You go to
so
visit.
For the student.
Yeah. What do you do when you don't remember the topic they need help with? I guess just in the class you can kind of get a feel for what they're missing, I guess.
I don't really understand the question.
Well,
Building the rapports, you don't remember the topic they need help
I mean, I guess if we're asking questions, you can realise if a student's struggling with something and you can't remember from the previous week what they were having trouble with, you can have a look back at your notes maybe or something like that. But yeah, I guess through just speaking with them, they can also, if you have that rapport, you'll find that they ask you, oh, actually, I have a problem with this, can we practice this? Or I read this in a magazine the other day, I'm not quite sure of the meaning. I've got lots of students who actually come to me and say, oh, I heard this, what does that mean? And so yeah, them being comfortable enough to ask you ask you questions and what they're struggling with is part of the rapport. And that's when you know that they're comfortable with you. I guess. Well, I was going to say, is there a difference in building rapport with online students? We talked a little bit about it.
Touch base, yeah.
It can, I don't know, I think, yeah, it's a little bit of a difference.
Discussed, maybe it's harder in terms of, you see each other, but the person is not in front of you, so of course the interaction is different, but maybe different in a way that you have to try more. Maybe to show your smile really, or to use your really facial expressions and these kind of things. Maybe use your hands, because this is the only way to communicate with them, right?
Yeah, if they've got a webcam and they can see you, like you said with the phone, you can hear when someone's smiling, even if they're at the opposite end of the phone.
It's the tone of the voice, as you mentioned.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, and we have one more question. How can we make sure that we make a good impression? So we mentioned about the 7 seconds. We've got 7 seconds, Monica. How do we do it? What do you think?
What is the easiest thing? I come, I'm not here yet, and now I come and I go like this. What would you think about me? What impression does it, you have to smile. I mean, that's the easiest one, right?
Be open, like we mentioned, your body language, be open.
Be genuine. Don't overdo things, try to be natural.
Yeah, which can be, if you're feeling, a little bit, it can be a bit awkward at the start, but yeah, just try to be natural, be yourself.
Yeah, that's how you make it real.
Yeah, and just look presentable. And that's the main thing, I think. So yeah.
I think so.
So I think that's the end of our questions then. So we've looked at some tips like we mentioned. We mentioned a little bit about what rapport is and how you build it, and about the first impression. We've answered your questions. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation, or we hope you enjoyed the presentation.
Well, we did.
Thank you for being here, and we will see you soon.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.